Afternoon, everybody. As Ian said, really key few minutes talking a little bit more about the feedback and looking about how this sort of works in a customer services world. And it probably sort of builds on some of the stuff that we've already talked about this morning. I think what I'll touch on is a little bit more specifically about Barclays, so the role that servicing has had a part to play for us. Touch a little bit about what we went through last year, and ultimately get down to some of the approaches to how we start to deal with some of the comments and some of the key rationale behind that. I guess before I move on, it's probably worth just setting a little bit of context to where the servicing angle starts to sit within what we're trying to do within social media. So clearly for us, two different spectrums of what we're trying to do in the social media space. One is our customers, be they business or consumers, and clearly the other side being our colleagues, so staff, and what do we want those guys to physically do? How do we give them the right guidance and structures to work safely and transparently in the social media space? Now, sandwiched between those are probably four key pillars of things that we're looking to try and achieve. Clearly, one that we touched on this morning is about how do we use the channels to drive through a proactive improvement of our brand or brand presence for us as an organisation. The next one I'll touch on, and I'll come back to the second one there, is customer sentiment. So what do we need to understand? What can we gain from the insight and knowledge and intelligence about what our customers are saying about us as an organisation? How do we want to react to that is a key challenge as well. The piece there, the customer engagement, is what we'll spend most of the time on here. So again, how do we start to dip in and engage in the right kind of environment with our particular customers? And the one that I left deliberately till last is sort of looking at the customer needs. That's not necessarily about what the needs of our customers are, but looking at it from a commercial angle. How can we potentially leverage these channels to move people along a purchase funnel, ultimately to make a decision? And I think that comes back to what content can we provide out to these people to let them understand and learn about what it is us as a business can help them with. So the customer engagement piece is the piece I'm going to focus on. So what did we launch back in November last year? Probably reasonably late to the game as a social media player for the servicing world, but we had the Barclays online channel that went live in November, and very much for us as a starting point, as you'll see, if you can see from the very back there, this was very much a 9:30 till 5 o'clock opening time. It wasn't at that point a view of being a 24/7 approach. So there were a lot of things that we worked through to get right within this process, and this is probably really the focus of what we'll talk about. A huge amount of decisions to take place from what do we want to call the channel to some degree? You know, how do we want the naming convention to work? A lot of them focused on the hours of operation, the reporting, etc. And probably the biggest point, which I'll spend time on in a second, is around the governance framework. What do we need to put in place to make everybody feel safe and secure that what we are doing is the right thing for us as a business and also for our customers as well? And I'll maybe come back to some of these in a second. So I think the key focus for us was getting this right for as a business. And it was interesting working through the journey with some of our very senior execs. Their premise was, we're going to get something wrong, that's fine, we'll deal with it and we'll move on, which is a good place to start with, rather than potentially being that very safe, secure, got to get it right 100% of the time within this space. So I very much went in with this principle for putting our social servicing live, is we didn't want to be in that environment where I've certainly seen some organisations have exactly the same tweet in every response back to every individual customer, which was, thank you for your inquiry, please send us an email to this address. So that's a key proviso for me. We wanted to actually start to engage with customers through the channel, solve what we can through that particular channel, but equally though, at the right time, for the right purpose, do take that offline into an email or a telephone environment as well. But certainly that was a key go-to for us, was make sure that we didn't have the same, just literally a wall of tweets all saying exactly the same thing. All that's slightly different is a physical Twitter address. So as you can imagine, for a very historically risk-averse organisation, we put some massive controls in place to make sure that we got everybody to sign off from IT from a security perspective, all the way through the governance from compliance, risk, legal, etc., to be in a position where, again, from a guiding principle, we wanted the people on the end of this service to have the flexibility to provide a relevant response back. So not have to go off every day to get a whole bunch of tweets confirmed and approved by legal, to literally work very smoothly and very rapidly through that process so we can meet the kind of SLAs that we put in place. Key proviso for that, which is quite interesting, was we actually went down the world of having copywriting training for these guys as well. Not an awful lot you can say in 140 words, but equally sometimes, as we've all probably struggled sending text messages to get the articulation right, putting something condensed down that's quite a powerful message is quite difficult to do without the right kind of training. So we had quite a robust training exercise for these guys in not just the terminology, but also about how to phrase us as a business and our brand back out to that particular customer to deal with in the right kind of way, in the right kind of tone. Clearly, we've got our brand principles we needed to bring forward and take into all that terminology and phrases and words. So that was very much a key input to that whole process for us. And I think something that we set out at the very start to do, I say, was to make sure that as we learned through this process, that we literally reviewed every tweet that went back out every week. So we were doing that as a coaching and a mentoring basis, not to micromanage individuals, but literally at the end of the week, what was said, what were the responses back, anything we can learn from that so we can improve ourselves moving on in the future. So that was a key piece of the jigsaw for us, was to make sure that we put that rigor in place to physically do that measurement. Now, clearly we're at the point now where it's not really scalable to do that, but we've taken that key learning through from it for that particular environment to make those decisions through for how we could improve the service on an ongoing basis. So another part of the agenda item was, well, clearly this is a channel where everyone expects pretty quick response. We've probably all thrown a tweet out there where we're not had any response back. It's blooming frustrating. So we defined some SLAs to what we wanted to do within that time window that we were going to be operational. So, but I equally think that I'm not convinced that there's a right or wrong answer to how quick you need to deliver something back to the customer. We have the proviso that people want it reasonably quickly, but as long as you meet the expectations of what you set out there. Now, we had an SLA that we would respond back inside 3 hours, and thankfully, for all the several hundreds and probably about 1,500 tweets now we've sent, we've delivered to that SLA, which has been great. So good tick in the box there to deliver that. So the key proviso to that was really setting that expectations, and we've had some criticism from internals and sort of externals as well, that we've set this as a 9:30 to a 5 o'clock window. And I say we did that very deliberately as for us was a bit of a test of the channel, how's it going to work, but equally what controls can we put around this? We have a huge amount of handoffs to deal with, from anything as simple as a mortgage detail through to an investment, through to something else. And we've got a lot of people to hand off those particular inquiries to if we need to. Now, they're not around at 10 o'clock at night. So how can we meet and deliver those SLAs if people aren't in that kind of environment? So we deliberately kept that window very focused to the sort of core banking hours when we can physically offer the right kind of service in and through. It's interesting, I think we've seen through the stats, I think 65% of all the tweets that we get come in that 9:30 to 5 o'clock window. And then the next 15% come up till about 8 o'clock at night. And then we get the random odds and sods coming through at sort of midnight and 2 in the morning. So we're covering a huge amount of the time when customers are expecting to have that coming through. So I think for us, whereas 24/7 is probably a great nirvana to get to, it will put a lot of pressures on the business to how can we meet those SLAs and how can we deliver the right kind of response back to a customer rather than just a potential holding comment back out. So again, this is about service hours through to the quality of service that we can deliver someone at the right kind of time. So that's a key challenge for us as we look to scale and grow that as we go through. So the comments that we get through clearly are very wide-ranging, as I've said, and I think the key two words for me, and I think we've mentioned one of them already today, but transparency was a key key word that we went into. We've got to be pretty open and pretty honest if we're going to deliver the right kind of conversations back to the customers. And humility was the other one. I don't think that's been mentioned yet so far today. But it was going in with the right frame of mind, the right kind of tone to be open and honest, to get the right kind of feedback. And we've seen great responses back from customers when we have that open and honest, transparent and humility-based kind of conversations. Now, in an environment that's reasonably small at the moment, we open that up very much as a common sense approach for the guys dealing with this. Clearly, as this becomes more scalable, we need to put more controls and more rigor around what we want to go do. But we've also seen, for those sort of negative tweets that we do have, and as you can probably imagine, you guys out there, we have many, as I suppose everyone else does, we also see an awful lot of self-regulation back in from consumers working within that channel as well. So if somebody does believe something is totally not our fault, not an issue, then we've seen some consumers step in and actually be those advocates for us for the brand, which is great in these early days, and that's clearly where we want to get that whole dialogue flow going back within the consumers. So I think for us, probably something we didn't do enough of, and we haven't done enough of yet, is delve into the tweets and the conversations going on out there that haven't been directed at us. So we've dealt with and we deal with the at mentions and we deal with the hash mentions, but we've not necessarily picked up all the dialogue out there that is going on around Barclays and taken the decision of which do we pick into and which do we don't. And that is going to be very much a next stage of evolution for us to make that much more of a proactive dialogue flow, but clearly do it in a controlled fashion so we don't take the premise of sort of overarching into conversations where we might not necessarily be requested to go join. From the positive standpoint, clearly when we have done things well and we've made a particular save, clearly what we've done is communicate that around the organisation in very much an early stage launch. It's to let everyone make everyone aware of what the challenges are, what challenges we've overcome, how we've solved them, and what the team have literally gone off and worked with. Now, equally, some of the negative ones are very much open up there. They're out for the world to see. And we dealt very early with the questions of, my God, look at that profanity, can't we take it down? Clearly the challenge is you can't necessarily take it down, so we just got to deal with that. And it was just an eye-opening exercise for the organisation to understand what we were getting ourselves into. And thankfully those have been very few and far between. We've had to deal with those at all. So I say next stage for us is how do we start to work with that proactive dialogue and conversation back out on an ongoing basis and clearly work out what should we respond to, what shouldn't we respond to, because there's an awful lot of dialogue we probably don't need to respond to and probably shouldn't engage with. So as I say, to come back to some of the pieces that I might not have covered off there on the governance standpoint, as I said, handoffs were a key point for us to make sure we've got the right links to the right people in the organisation who are going to support us if there's some kind of dialogue we don't know the answer to and we don't know how to handle within that. So getting those guys on board, and we had from the PR team all the way through all the product cycles, all the servicing teams, very much on board to help us with the right kind of comments that we needed. As I mentioned before, that whole what we tweet and what we send back as response is a key for us, and hence the quite rigorous training on copywriting, brand, tools, etc. Was really important for us. So that training mechanism was really, really key. And the final piece of the jigsaw for us was the tool that we were going to go and use. How do we want to respond? What mechanism is it? Is it safe? Is it secure for our IT security chaps? But equally, do we have an audit process so we know who said what when out to those customers? So that was a key stepping stone for us as well to work through. So just to sort of round up, give you a little bit of view of things that we went through. As I said, for us, for Barclays, for a large organisation, it was quite we were late to the market, but quite a brave step for us to go what we went off and did, but a logical step, which was good to see. The interesting for me was just the sheer demand had changed probably in a 6-month window of our senior execs from the oh, no, can't do this, how can we sort of enter into that space, into huge sponsorship to make us what we need to go through into the social space really come to life, which has been great to see, because I've seen many other organisations that struggle with that. As we went through with the team, I say what we did to start with, the very early days, we handpicked the guys who were going to respond to this, which was very key for us. Clearly, as we move on into making that scalable and more robust and a bigger team, it's going to be very difficult to do that necessarily, but at least we know the kind of controls and the measures these guys need to have in place to make this work for us. And certainly when I've spoken before about this, interesting people have said, what's been your success measure? And someone quite glibly came out from the audience, well, you've still got your job, so it must have been successful. So for me, we didn't go into this with a particular goal of ROI, keeping customers, or anything like this. It was just a venture in. And what we've certainly seen is good reception from our customers for doing this. And we've also seen good adoption internally to the processes and changes that we need to make place. So for me, that was the key measurement of success for me, that we've done it, we've delivered it well, and actually it's been really, really well received, rather than any particular metric. I didn't have a counter saying we needed to have so many followers by a certain amount of time. It's organically grown to a reasonable figure already. I say the time scale of the SLA was key. We put a stake in the ground. We looked at some industry benchmarks for that, and we've delivered it, which has probably been the biggest success factor. So we've not had people overrunning and not having that dialogue flow back in within the hours that we needed to work within. And I think for us to say that next step for us is really about going to be how do we evolve this into a really integral part to the organisation, much as probably the contact centres started out 20 years ago. How do we now move this into the next stage of evolution that really is about a mission critical, just a natural thing that we need to go do and articulate with our customers. Okay.
Thank you very much, Robert. Okay, and again, we have time for a few questions. So, gentleman at the back there.
Hi there, I'm Stuart Rye from Fujitsu. I think actually picking up on your final point, it feels like in an attempt to address the public nature of social media interactions, organizations are seeking to be very customer focused. There's a danger that sets an expectation in a multi-channel world where actually this channel is just one of a number, particularly with banks, that customers engage their suppliers or their banks. So I suppose there's a question for Barclays, but also a question for anybody else who wants to think about it. Is the traditional community bank ready for the customers expecting the same civility and tone and humility when they go into their branch? And how will the bank seed this new customer focus into their fixed channel?
Interesting one. I think, certainly, I'll recount it to us necessarily before we sort of open it out to any industry challenges. I think it is a valid challenge. As you go from an environment where we've got a very controlled group of people delivering back something that's very measurable, very immediate, and you can see that, how can you replicate that into 20-odd thousand out in branches? And that's a real difficult challenge for us to overcome. But that's no different to if we have a new mortgage product to take out there. We need to make sure that those guys are trained and equipped to deal with the activity within there. Now, another stage of evolution for us is how do we actually want our 30-odd thousand employees dotted around the UK to also engage in the social channels, not necessarily be a brand ambassador. We don't want them to start to all engage and solve the same question that someone else might be doing, but how can they start to engage in the channels in a way that they feel protected they can do that? So that's one side to it. I think as we then start to evolve the social responding back and how that starts to mature into just an adjunct to a face-to-face, a telephone, a web interaction, or a social interaction, we will have a much more linked up and coordinated activity to make that happen. I'm not going to say we're there today. That's going to take some time to do, but I think we'll start to see, and as I talk to my colleagues, I think the world of digital marketing challenged marketing to some degree and challenged the organisation. I see social breaking the model, and that's going to be a quick change that people are going to have to react differently to pick that up. So I hope that kind of answered it. Certainly no defined solution yet, but I know we've got to get there.
Okay, thank you. Christophe, I think you had your hand up there.
Merci. Hi, Robert.
Hi.
Nice to meet you at last.
Indeed.
Christophe Langlois, Visible Banking. 2 questions. Well, first a remark. You said the senior execs are more and more willing to put budget for that, right? Probably helped that Lloyds TSB have done quite a good job with their 3 accounts, I guess, and customer care in the UK. That helps usually. 2 questions. Outreach. You said that you're mainly focused on responding to people addressing you directly.
Yep.
There's 2 very sub-questions. One is, what if they ask a question through another Barclays account, which is one of the issues. Usually the customer sees one account and he interacts with it, even if it's customer care.
Yep.
That's one thing. And how much visibility then do you give to the Barclays online account? Because if nobody knows it's there, I mean, they can't interact with you. So that's the main question. Second, super important question. When you ask people to send you an email, are they your initials or WR?
No, they're not.
That was a very important question. Yeah.
No, there you go. WRT is Web Relations Team, effectively. That's what that stands for.
Merci.
So no little play on my initials at all.
Good.
Yeah. So let me go back to, I remember the first question here. So the dealing with the linking up all the different channels that we have, and I think this is a challenge that we certainly have as an organisation, I'm sure many of us do in the room, is the plethora of different channels that are opening up in the Twitter space. Thankfully for us, on the mass volume, there's only really ourselves and my colleagues in Barclaycard who probably account for somewhere in the region of 80% of all the sort of social traffic around the Barclays estate at the moment. If I exclude football to one side for now, a little bit outside of my remit.
And cycle.
Sorry?
And cycle and the
Yep. So there's a lot of work that goes on in the sponsorship world. What we've certainly done, and we've tied together the Barclaycard guys very well, is just the signposting backwards and forwards. They tend to get less Barclays service requests than we tend to get Barclaycard requests for information. So we're certainly signposting off for those guys to work, and we work very collaboratively, even to the point of shared processes, shared approaches to how we need to work this through. So that's where we're trying to solve, I think, the first kind of question that you had within there. Now, have I missed a question there, Christophe?
No, and I said, so then if you're focused mainly, on responding to people addressing Barclays online,
Yep.
how much visibility do you give that account? Because I think on your contact page there's nothing, it's not mentioned.
No, that's
So-
right. Very observant. You know, so far,
Thank you.
we have not communicated the channel out to the outside world. And that was done very deliberately. We let people find it to start with. So we had the @Barclays account, which was left there very dormant. No one was working with it. We set out Barclays Online to the side of it, very deliberately just to see how this was going to go work. So we're at that point now where probably I would say in a very short period of time we will start the communication back out to say, this is here, why don't you communicate with us through this channel? Now we're going to do it necessarily, stick it on a TV ad and say, all come and follow us. I think we'll certainly have challenges coping with that, but we'll do it in a staged approach. So it might be, as an example, our online banking customers, who are probably a good source of Twitter-style servicing requirements. Let's take a portion of them and let them know that we're out here and we can start to work with them. And then once we've gained the kind of view of how scalable does that mean for us, then we could do the next portion, I think we would certainly, we wouldn't deliver the service levels if we just flooded the market with this is how you need to come and work with us at the moment. So it will be a staged approach.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions? Spot for choice. This gentleman here.
Hi, just a quick one. Are you planning on capturing Twitter, Facebook type handles for your customers so you can capture that and extend your database and contact with them directly?
We only contact them directly if they've sent us a direct message back. So we've got no plans to start to use that, and we can't attach it to a customer record if you don't know who they are. So we have no plans at the moment for doing that sort of social CRM approach of taking that through. I think clearly it's an area we need to look at and consider how we can start to tie it together, but we just can't tie the consumers together with the customer records at the moment. And we can clearly, where we've done the delving, we've solved and fixed the solution. So to some degree those will be in case notes, but not necessarily physically assigned to an account number.
Okay. I've got time for 2 more questions. So these 2 gentlemen down here, it's up to you who goes first.
Hi, yeah, it's Nick Joy from LV. we're already dabbling with some outreach. So beyond just responding to the direct sort of tweets and Facebook messages, we actually pick up mentions via Radian 6. It's quite interesting. Sometimes people will respond to, oh, I didn't realise you actually read these things, or how did you know I posted this? To other people going, aha, I wondered how long it would take for someone to get back to me. And I guess what I would say, it's not so much a learning, but just almost a caution. It's kind of like, don't be surprised with what you get. Because some people really do see it as you crashing their dinner party. And other people are saying, I've been waiting, it's about time. So good luck, really.
Yeah, I think, and I totally agree. I think we haven't earned the right to go and respond to everything that's communicated about us. And I say there's a lot of stuff I don't want to go communicate to. But we'll learn, as probably you've done as well, and we'll just pick up the signals. And I think certainly the better side will err on the side of caution, certainly to start with, not just sort of reach in and do everything. So that will certainly be our approach, and probably echoed kind of things that you probably uncovered.
And final question.
Hi, Robert. It's Sean Tomlinson from Stereo. I appreciate what you've been doing. It's been an unadvertised trial, but I wondered whether you'd had any learnings over the likelihood of this being a replacement channel for customer service, or is it as an additional channel? Will you get movement away from your existing customer service channels?
Yeah, good question. I have to say, with the kind of scale that we've seen so far, I can't judge that for yet. But what I have seen is, first off, customers are using this as another way to try and get hold of us and try and get an answer they want. So they've maybe tried in one environment that might be a complaint approach. They haven't got what they want, so they want to try us as another vehicle they can try. So thankfully we tied all those back together, so we didn't trip ourselves up. I think we've certainly seen more of those in-depth style of digging around and issue resolutions than ideally we would have had of more the simplistic solve a question. How to do this, how to do the other. I'm a student going to a branch, do you have a branch in Cumbria, for instance? So we kind of assumed we'd have had more of those, but I guess that comes back to Christoph's point. If we don't publicise it, we'll never know that it's necessarily there. So I think we've probably had people so far coming to us who wanted to reach out further, and therefore they hunted for that particular channel of activity. I'm sure the kind of dialogues that we'll have once it's become more sort of public, then it will be a different kind of flow of conversation. But I've not seen it yet so far in a view of taking calls away from the contact centres. I think we might see that move that way, but I think it will be other servicing angles that will wrap around the social media space that will potentially help that, rather than just the Twitter channel on its own. Okay?
Okay. Robert, thank you very much indeed.
No problem. Thank you.